Well, hello, hello, hello. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for tuning in to Just Another Messenger. I am your host, Tamara L. On this wonderful Wednesday night, the day of Wooden, October the 30th, the eve of Halloween, Hallows Eve. The day that most celebrate, they say the Day of the Dead, the Day of the Ancestors. So, thank you for tuning in to Just Another Messenger. Now, at Just Another Messenger, we will dive deep into thought provoking conversations on history, language, culture, current events, personal growth, and everything in between. Now, each episodes bring a fresh perspective on life complexities with engaging discussions that challenges the status quo and inspire a meaningful dialogue. Now, whether we're going to be exploring social trends, tackling mental health topics, or sharing inspiring stories from everyday people, Just Another Messenger is here to spark conversations that matter. Just Another Messenger is more than just talk. Now, join us for insightful chats that we go beyond the surface, offering a blend of information, inspiration, and a little bit of humor. I love a little bit of humor. I am a Libra girl, so I love a little bit of humor. Now, please subscribe to our channel at Just Another Messenger on YouTube and be a part of the conversation. You don't want to miss it. Now, let me give you a quick disclaimer. Now, the views and opinions and thoughts are the perspective are the protective expression of Tamara L. I am Tamara L. Now, this is for storytelling purpose and does not provide any type of statutory counseling for any United States color of law jurisdiction proceeding. Now that we have that out the way, we do not have to worry about being censored because Justin a Messenger is not monetized on YouTube. We will be building another platform off of that. So I want to provide you some information on where you can donate to support the channel. You can support the channel via Cash App at Just Another Messenger. So there you have it, strolled at the bottom. You can donate to Just Another Messenger. And like I said, you want to go subscribe, like, and share on YouTube. Get our subscribership up. We're new. We just started this channel last Monday on my solar return. It was a wonderful gift for both you and I. So please subscribe, share, and like on YouTube on Just Another Messenger. We're also on X. It's the handler is at Jam 404 at podcast. So I'll get the information for you. I forgot to put it in this ticker. So I will have that information for you as well. Now, if you need to contact um, a member at Just Another Messenger, you can reach us at email at Just Another Messenger Podcast at gmail.com. So that is the information we have. I'll make sure it continues to scroll at the bottom of your screen. So let's ponder over the question, why is history important? Now let's put your answers in the chat. I know we have some people coming in, and as we have the people come in, let's go ahead and put your answer in the chat of why history is important. Now, let me explain. Let me give you some answers here as why history is important to me. Now, history is important because it's the foundation of today and tomorrow's journey. History also helps you identify with mental struggles, which creates a pathway towards liberation. Now, if you don't remember who you are, you definitely don't know if there's anything worth to fight for. You know, you will be very comfortable in whatever state that you're in. So that's the beauty of what history provides. It provides that clear pathway to be able to understand the direction that you're going in your current path journey as well as for the future. Now, lastly, history also aids to release the pressure to conform to any type of ideology that just doesn't vibrate with you. I know there's times when, you just feel like I'm the lone wolf, or I feel something is just not right. I need to get more information. So, when that occurs in your spirit, it allows you to kind of go dig deeper into what you're looking for. And history will unlock those things for you. Now, keeping that in mind, now, like I said, last week we talked about reparations scheme in the Black community, and we put emphasis on the term Black, and we went over that. Now, some say that history repeats itself, and as I will continue to say, and I will always say that history has continued its journey to this present day. Now, on today's episode, we're going to continue along the journey of revisiting the past that allows a better understanding for course correction to heal the ancestral wounds in the Black community. Now, just recently, like I said on the Breakfast Club, now Charlemagne the God posed a question to our current Vice President, Kamala Harris. Now, we're like 6 days away from the election. I mean, and this thing is heating up. Family members are fighting with one another, friends are blocking each other off social media. So, there's just a lot heated debates and information going on with that being said. So the question was posed, to the Vice President Kamala Harris about reparations being a legal topic in Congress if elected to the vice presidency. Now, well, she responded by saying, well, it has to be studied. Okay, messengers, let's do this. Let's continue down the rabbit hole of the complex nature regarding reparation schemes that's cloaked in the Black community pain through the Anglo-American agenda of the founding fathers of founding thieves. So let's go ahead. Let's go. Let me go ahead and pull that information up for you. We just got to go over this. So we have that information right there. I hope you see it. Let's do a quick recap. Let's do a quick recap from last week. We're gonna have that recap called the reparation scheme in the Black community. We're gonna have a recap of that. So make sure. Here we go. As we talked about, the scheme is colonization. Now, what is our problem? Which nation needs to pay? We went over this last week, so we're going to have a quick understanding of this, just a quick recap. Now, we talk about the basis of civilization. We stated that all civilization has elements. So we went over 4 of these elements. We went over the God principle elements. That is at the apex of most civilizations. Now that God principles deals with Christianity. It could be some civilizations say Christianity, like the European society civilization that we're in today. It exercised as the pinnacle, the Judaism, Christianity faith. That's the pinnacle of it. Now, there's many denominations and many religions that are practiced in America, but the principal apex of the state nation religion is Christianity. Okay, most societies in antiquity have chosen a Mohammedan religion. Some has chose Islam, Buddhism, Confucian. So those are the different God principles that those nation states adhere to as the apex and pinnacle. Now, you have law, you have jurisprudence, positive law, or you have the statutory laws of statute, codes, and ordinance. You have that you deal with in a society. Now, next you have language. As we discussed in etymology, it's true. We went over the meaning of etymology. We went over the meaning of semantics. Go back to the first episode, the reparation scheme in the Black community. All that information is broken down. This is just a quick recap. Then we talked about the status of the people, the indigenous status, and we're going to break down immigration, refugee, asylum. We're going to get into that regarding the political status of the people in a society. We're going to get into that in this episode. All right, let's go. Let's quick going on our week recap here. Now, we talked about how the language follows the colonizer. Now, we didn't go over this much in detail, but I'd like you to be able to have understanding of the origins of language that deals with how a word is derived and how a word morphs based off the different regions that the word is carried into in the various territories. Now, all right, let's go over reparations again. We went over the etymology of reparations, which means means to produce, to procure, back again. So these are the root words of it. So the etymological meaning of reparations meaning to reproduce. Now the semantics of reparations mean repair damages. Now we talked about the territory versus the jurisdictional land rights and how it impacts us socially. We discussed how there were tribes and societies that already existed in the land, before the colonizations start occurring in America, whether it's North America, South America, Central America. We show the pathway of how tribes and nations were already operating in their culture and folklores and Norways. We discussed that. All right, now this is a key element here. The church is complicit in colonization. This is a very key topic that we're going to really focus on this area, to be able to understand not where to point blame at, but you got to have a foundational understanding of the root of a situation. Where did this oppression and suppression, what is the root cause of it? So we're going to look at that in full detail when we discuss the role of the Anglo-American agenda regarding the role of the founding fathers of founding thieves. We're going to touch on that in a lot of detail. And we say the Pope has all the power to crown or uncrown also any empires within this realm. Now, we're going to go over the understanding of the realm of an empire. Now, the titles that most popes hold, it would either be Father of Kings and Monarchs, Lord of the Globe, the Vicar of God. The word vicar means voice, the voice of God. And they seat at the Holy See of Peter. Now, one of the things that we're going to find interesting is that even though there's been years of crusade, and a crusade is what you call a holy war, and it's a holy war about the religious aspect of it. Even though there's been years and years and years of bloodshed and crusade in the name of a God, one of the things that has been more effective than the sword, you'll see, is the pen. We're going to show how the pen has been mightier than the sword. And that was done in 1492 through the Dum Diverses, which means until different. Keep in mind that this was issued by Pope Nicholas on June 18, 1452, to Alfonso V of Portuguese, the Moor. Now, next week is going to be a banger. We have a special guest, Jacoby Ponder. He's going to come in and break down the Black nobility. So I'm highlighting these key factors so you can make these connections, okay? Now, this papal bull that it's like an order that was given, and it validates his appropriations of regions in West Africa. Now we read over this and it gives information of what the crown granted to King Alfonso to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and to do all Saracens and pagans whatsoever. We gave the understanding of who is a Saracen, who would be a considered Saracen. Do Saracens still exist to this day? Yes, they do. Never went away. You look at people such as myself, melanated people of darker hue, we will be considered and classified as Saracens. If you place us back into antiquity, we are considered the Saracens. All right. Now, as this thing moved forward, now there's another bull that was issued in 1492 to Rodrigo Borgia. He was called a White Moor. Now there's a Netflix series out. It's called Borgia, the Borgia. It's a great series. It really gives you an understanding about the role of the Pope, the Chancery, the councils. And there's a new one out. I haven't had opportunity to watch it yet. It's called The Conclave, which I think is gonna, kind of highlight and also confirm some of the complicity of the crown in the role that they played in colonization. Now, this bull called was issued. This papal bull was issued on May the 4th, 1493. The Intercatera, aka Doctrine of Discovery. Now, this Doctrine of Discovery is to this day provides a problem regarding occupancy, regarding discovery, regarding jurisdiction of a land and usurpation. So we're going to go over that as well. Now, as you can see, the framework of the Doctrine of Discovery, the framework of this is to overthrow the barbarous Black nations and bring to the Catholic faith of the Christian religion. Now, this was already set. This was set up after Christopher Columbus had sailed to the area known as Portugal. And so once that occurred, the Doctrine of Discovery was issued to be able to go and subdue that area. Now, this happened, as we said, after the 1492 fall of the Red House, which is Alhambra, the last Moorish stronghold in Granada. We went over that. Now, this is a recap, and this is the area that we discussed, in which the Doctrine of Discovery gave way to claim the land for Spain. Now, as you can see, we go over the last explorers of the Blacks. We talked about the British are coming. Now, keep in mind, we said this was British territory before it goes into different colony jurisdiction. Now, that is very key element to be able to understand. All right. Now, as we had our recap for today, let's just get into it. Let's get into our recap, and we're going to go over some other elements. Now, this information, part 2. This is dealing with the founding fathers, the founding thieves. Let's get into this information right here. Now, I know that recap was a lot. We touched on a lot, but we're going to go ahead and move forward with getting into today's information regarding that. And to help just understand, let's go. All right. Now, I thought it was quite key to just talk about the origin of propaganda. Now, the origin of propaganda and the etymological of this is propagating the faith. Now, this was done in 1622 for the Congregation for Propagating the Faith. Now, this was a committee of cardinals found in Rome. Now, there was a mission for them. Now, it was first given to the general currency by the Roman Catholic Church to refer to the dissemination of its doctrines. That means they were like the first ones to go ahead in the mission for the Doctrine of Discovery, to go out and search out, the pagans in the area, and to see, to communicate with the people, to determine their culture, and kind of like, let's get a head count. Let's get a head count of who we're going to be dealing with, and who we need to convert over to the Christian faith. So they were like the front runners of the mission of the Doctrine of Discovery. So I thought this information was great to be able to pinpoint and make a connection, because they created layers. There was layers created within this conquest to be able to move forward. All right. Now, as you can see, this propaganda message, there's two messages that are here. One of the messages, let's just read this to the right. The first one is a woodcut of 1545, known as the Depictions of the Papacy in English. Now, this was commissioned by Martin Luther, and it's titled Kissing the Pope's Feet. Now, this is German peasants respond to a papal bull of Pope Paul III, in which captions read, "Don't frighten us, Pope, with your ban, and don't be such a furious man otherwise. We should turn around and show you our rears." So this was a propaganda spreading about, hey, we're going to obey your message moving forward, but if you're not going to respect us, this is how we're going to behave as well. Now, another propaganda message here shows side by side Britannia. Now, this is arm in arm with Uncle Sam that symbolizes the British American alliance in the World War One. Now, this was done as recently as December the 7th, 1918. Now, I know a lot of times we never look at the political status of migration when we're discussing the Atlantic slave trade. Now, there were various status. Now, I know a lot of times we hear that, okay, we just only hear about the slave's journey, but you never hear about the free journey, because this was a journey of a business journey. This was a journey of merchants and investors. That's what the original name of the first corporation. It was called, that's for the British. It was called merchants and adventurers. Adventurers meant investors. So they were able to receive permission from a royal monarch to go and set up the colonies. And that's where was the beginning of that. And we're going to get into the understanding of that. But let's look at the political status of the migration, because not everyone was a slave. Let's make that clear. Not everyone were not a slaves. Some people came in different status. So let's look at that in detail. Now let's look at the word immigrate. Immigrate. Now that means, on the other hand, now that is someone who leaves a country or region. Now a person is considered an immigrant as soon as they leave with the intention to leave permanently. Did you hear that? Permanently, and not just to travel, for example, for vacation or anything like that. The important word is the E in immigrate. Immigrate. That means out or away. Why am I putting emphasis on this? You see this occurring every day. There was a mass, let's make this clear. There was a mass migration to North America, the mainlands. And on the news, you will hear the propaganda. Oh, the border is not secure. The borders have been breached. The borders need to be, these border wars, that's like a set tripping. It's like when you see, they say gangs, turf, and this turf. That's been going on for ages, right? So, okay, now keep in mind, in order to immigrate, you can, but that's a different status. But when you're moving in a fashion such as immigrate, you're documented that you're leaving. It's well documented that you're leaving, and it's well documented where you're going for that receiving country, a nation, to receive you for assistance. So that's how, when people say, well, how do they know the head count? Well, they're not sitting there like with a clicker saying, 1 million, 2 million. No, it's well documented. The name of the people that will be leaving out this particular country, this particular nation, and they will be migrating to this new host nation state. It is documented. It's not a secret unless they're in a different status. But as you can see currently, the new migration, they're not in the status of a refugee or asylum seekers. They are in status of an immigrant. You must keep that in mind. That's why I said history has legs. It keeps moving. It never changes. It's not repeating itself. It keeps going. Now, let's look at the status of immigration. Is a person who has immigrated, means to move to another country, usually for permanent resident, not the past tense in the definition. It's a person is not considered an immigration until they have settled in a new place. Did you hear me? Settled in a new place. We know you're coming. We are where you're coming. Okay. Are you pregnant? How many children do you have? Do you, who are you bringing with you? All that is documented. You know, Are they coming from a jail? Are we clearing out the jail cells? Are we clearing out the insane asylum? That is well documented. All right. Now, as you can see, the I am in immigration means in. So immigrate means going out of one nation state country. Immigration is coming in to a new nation state, a country. Just want to make that very clear. Now, let's look at the next status we have here. You have a refugee. Now, that's a person who flees for refugee or safety, especially to a foreign country, as in a time of political upheaval, war, etc. Now, that happens as well. However, when that occurs, a person must still report to that new nation for the protection. If not, they're just wandering out here unprotected, and they can be deported back. They can be deported back to the nation they fled from, not knowing if they're running for their life. It's like, hey, we don't know what you're doing here. Same as asylum seekers. That's a person who applies for refugee or asylum in a foreign country or its embassy, especially for political reasons. So, people, we just want to make this clear. Want to make this very clear. When the propaganda machine start, ramping up, you have to understand the political status. You must understand the propaganda that's taking place to try to put into your minds to have you thinking one way in reference to what's occurring, how it takes your mind away from the truth, which is called the red herring effect. A red herring is taking place to have you distracted. Why are you being distracted? Because there's something financially that's taking place in the background between nation states that don't want to be seen to cause an uproar in your current nation. That's what is current here. All right. Now, look at this. Look at this right here. We have European migration to America dated from 1620, when 100 pilgrims from England set out in a difficult 4-month journey in the Atlantic Ocean, across the Atlantic Ocean. Now look at that picture. Now I know a lot of times you're shown that picture of the slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade, to put in your mind that these are the people that was carried over to America, and they were, came over in this manner, but they never show this picture to where the Europeans willingly left their homeland over 500 years ago. They gave up their homeland, their ancestry, and they immigrated out of their homeland and immigrated, into the new colonies. That's not discussed. That's not talked about. So when there can't be fingers pointed about, the immigrants are coming, and what occurred. That can't be discussed without looking at the foundation of the status of the ancestors and being a descendant of those that left their home country over 500 years ago in the same manner. That's never discussed. It's never talked about. It only talks about, and this creates a ancestral room psyche into, the people that are classified as Black or African. The only thing that's placed in the psyche is that transatlantic slave trade narrative. And so you feel like you're never at home. But we're going to get into that, Dorothy, because you have bumped your head and you have always been home. All right. Now, look at this European migration periods to America. Now, as you can see, from 1492 to 1820, around 2.6 million Europeans migrated to the Americas, with the majority coming from the Iberian Peninsula. Iberian Peninsula. That's the area known as Africa. So look at 1815 and 1930, around 60 million Europeans migrated to the Americas, with 71% going to North America. 1820 to 1957, all the way to 1957. Now, put a point on 1957 because not only were over 34 million Europeans migrated to the United States, with the most common countries of origin being Germany, Italy, Ireland, Great Britain, and Russia. Now, not only in 1957 were they migrating to America, they were also migrating. They were also migrating. They were also migrating to what is currently called Israel, which is became a nation state after immigration, the area of Palestine. So you have a nation of people that was well settled in their land, and you have people that immigrated into the land. And now, when you are aware of who you are, when you are aware of custody and control of the region in which gives you life, of course, when someone try to take it, you must protect yourself. All right. Now let's look at this. Now, who stated that the people can travel, that they can leave they can leave Europe, Great Britain at the time, they can leave the area and come to this new colony. Who provided this? Who provided this mandate that allowed them to do that? I'm gonna take this brand off here so we can see at the top. Who allowed this to occur? Keep in mind, this was issued by a royal monarch, King James I of England. Now, look at the red arrow that I pointed to. This deals with Black nobility. Next week is going to be a banger. We're going to go into that. We're going to go into King James, the Black nobility, the Black aristocrats that were a part of this colonization. Oh, did I say that? Did I give you a spoiler alert? Should I say that again? We're going to explore deeper and go into how the Black nobility, the Black aristocrats, were also a part of the colonization process. Yeah, we're going to get into that. So you'll have girth, you'll have understanding about what's going on, because there's been a level of comfort when you don't know who you are, you don't know what you're fighting for, or if there's anything to fight for. You become very comfortable in your everyday decisions. And, you just go on as if there's, life as usual. Just go on about your day. There's no there. So we're going to discuss that in detail. So now look at that. Black nobility issued by royal monarch King James of England. Now he issued this. This was the English Magna Carta Charter of 1215. And this is to promulgate public laws granting right or power to an individual or a body corporation. Please understand that. Highlight that, underline that. Make sure you have your pen, paper, Samsung, iPad, notepad. Take notes, people. And this helped establish significant organizations such as boroughs. Oh, I live in this borough. I live in this city. Yeah, municipalities, universities, and learned societies. So that is what a royal charter, aka letters of patent. Charter means permission. I grant you permission to go into the land in which I have territorial land rights jurisdiction. Let's look at that word, territorial land rights. Now, I hope everyone is still with me. Please, if you are, let's go ahead and let me know in the chat that you're still following along. I hope I'm connecting this for you between the reparation scheme and the Black community, as well as, you know, the Anglo-American Agenda. I hope you're following along and you got full depth understanding regarding the information that's being presented here. Now let's go into the territorial land rights. Now this is what is called droit, having complete ownership of a property, including both the right to own it and the right to possess it. Now, complete title to land include the tenements, inheritments, when they have both the right of possession and the right of property. In law, it's called droit. That is like a French word. Now, there's a difference between territorial land rights and jurisdictional land rights. Let's look at that. So, territorial land rights deal with a double right, droit, whereas jurisdictional land rights is only a droit, which is one legal right. You only have one legal right. Now there's a difference between the word legal and lawful. Legal is appointed, established, or authorized by law, deriving authority from law, which is statutory. So, which means that the king must provide someone a permission to come and settle in a land. Now, lawful is constituted, authorized, or established by law, which is rightful. That deals with first in time, first in law. Let's look at British North America. I thought this information was so in depth. This map provides some very key elements, as you can see here. As you can see, this is British North America, which was already established by the king. King George has already had territorial land rights to this area until he issued out charters, permission to come and settle. Now, it's not going to be in that order. Now, who did he issue out to? Let's look at the Southern Colony charter holders. In Virginia, in Jamestown, in 1607, he issued a charter to Captain John Smith. Look at the motivation was wealth, religion, the England, it through the House of Burgess. Let's look at Maryland, 1634, St. Mary's proprietorship. Havard family received that charter from the king. Lord Baltimore, look, motivation, refugee for Catholics. Didn't I say earlier that there must be a political status of either an immigration, asylum, or refugee? That status must be noted, which means the king was well aware of who was leaving and where you're going and where you're going to be, which means that there was communication with the nations that was receiving. There was communications with the tribes and nations that were already settled and had their mandates, constitutions, and how they operated in the land. That was already settled. Let's look at North Carolina, 1663, to Sir Ashley Cooper and 8 proprietors. They settled as the Virginia population began to grow. Farmers seeking more and new lands became North Carolina in 1712. When it became too hard to govern such a large territory, they received a royal colony of 1729. Now let's look at North Carolina, 1663. King George issued the charter to Sir Ashley Cooper and 8 proprietors, founded by settlers from Barbados. Barbados. Remember we talked about the Dom Diversis and the Doctrine of Discovery, where they were first giving the papal bull to go into the South America, Central America. They brought slaves and slave codes with them. In 1670, Charleston founded, became South Carolina in 1712 when it became too hard to govern such a large territory. All right. Now, Georgia was the last settled colony. As you can see, if you look at the map today, people say, well, wow, that doesn't look like Georgia. Now, keep in mind that the settlement of a colony is not going to give you the full latitude of what the king owned at the time. He's given a portion. A portion. Remember, we talked about a portion. He provided a portion of the land to settle and build a colony. Now, this was given in Savannah area to James Oglethorpe proprietorship. Look at the motivation: haven for debtors and buffer against the Spanish. So keep in mind, below the area known as Georgia, that was Spain had claimed that territory. That part was part of the doctrine of discovery. All right. Let's look at the middle colonies. The Charter of New York was given to the Duke of York. It's not called New York until after the charter goes into another state of a royal colony. It was given to the Duke of York of New Hampshire, founded by the Dutch in 1664, and the English forced the Dutch out, and it became New York through the royal colony of 1685. So that's where the name is derived from. But the name was already settled through the king. This is leasing. They're leasing the name. Yeah, did you hear me? They're leasing the name from the king. Now look at New Jersey, 1664. Sir George Cartier, John Lord Berkeley, proprietorship. Fort Nassau, settled in 1623. Pennsylvania, William Penn, proprietorship. Motivation, haven for Quakers. So when you have the Amish there, they have all this protection through William Penn and the charter of 1681. You have Delaware. In 1664, the Dutch ceded the territory to the English. It was originally New Sweden, and it was lost to Dutch in 1655. To this day, along the Delaware River, every year they host this event where you have the Dutch. It's like a ship that sails down at the riverfront, because I lived there for 8 years. So it's like a ship that sails through the Delaware River. It's a Dutch ship. I'll provide a picture and post it. And that ship is like in celebration of when the Dutch was in that area. They give honor and respect to the Dutch that was in that area at the time. And the crazy part about it is, right, like the area that you can kind of stand and really get a good view of that Dutch ship going by. They have a statue of Harriet Tubman like fleeing, because that was one of the routes route in which Harriet Tubman traveled through that area. So the symbolism is crazy, because you have this situation where you have a statue of Harriet Tubman fleeing through that area. And it's at the area where they say George Washington crossed the bridge at the Delaware River. You have Harriet Tubman. There's a picture of that. There's also the statue showing Harriet Tubman fleeing. And then they have the rendition of the Dutch boat that sailed through. All right. Let me get something to drink. This talking is a lot. Now let's look here. Delaware in 1664. So now Fort Christina in 1637 in Wilmington, proprietorship administered by William Penn. Now William Penn was very instrumental in this area. Delaware and Pennsylvania are so close. I can see how the connection was taking place. If you in the area, live in that area, I can see how the connection took place in the area. Now let's look at the New England colonies that was received a charter. Now, this was a joint stock company originally. As you can see, it was Plymouth Company Colony in 1620, Mayflower Compact. The motivation was the separatist refugee. They was refuge for their religion. Now, B. Salem in 1628, John Endicott, motivation, religious freedom. Massachusetts Bay Colony 1630, John Winthrop. They remind me of trading places. Mr. Winthrop. Motivation, Puritan refugee. Great Migration, Covenant with God, New Hampshire, 1623, Portsmouth, Captain John Mason, Puritan, motivation, expansion. Connecticut, 1635, Hartford, Thomas Hooker, Puritan, motivation, expansion. Now, Rhode Island, 1636, Providence, Roger Williams, Ann Hutchinson, motivation, religious tolerance. Man, so as you can see, a lot of Europeans immigrated, what immigrated was immigrants out of Europe, immigrated over to the colonies, and their number one reason was religion. To be able to worship under their own vine and fig tree without religious persecution. Mhm. To worship under their own vine and fig tree without religious persecution. There was only really one colony that said, hey, we came here to make that money. Now, as you can tell, as time went on in different colonies, they needed different laborers. The Europeans were considered to be indentured servants. As we talked about, they had what you call service contracts, anywhere to 4 to 5 years to work. Now, keep in mind, when they brought in through the Royal African Company, which was the largest slave traders that came out of West Africa, the area of West Africa. And we're going to show the complicity next week of how those African kings were complicit in that role, as well as transporting blacks, Indians. We're going to get into that understanding as well too, but I just want you to always have this in your notes, how they transported them also from the areas of Jamaica, Barbados, St. Kitts and Leeward. So all not everyone did not come from Africa. We're going to show that in detail. Well, majority of the people came from the Caribbean islands up to the main islands. They went from the sugarcane plantation, which was much harder to be able to work. And when they were able to say, okay, we need someone younger or faster or agile, we can trade them off into the mainland, into the cotton fields, which is less, not so hard on the bodies. So that was occurring. Now, there was I'll say over 100,000. It's documented. It's not millions. There was, I'll say, anywhere between 100,000 to 200,000 people that was transported through the African Royal Company during its time of operation from the shores of West Africa to the mainland. That did occur, but it's not in the fashion in which the propaganda has put in the psyche of people, to be able to have the fear of not knowing who they are, where they are, what they descend from. It wasn't at that magnitude. This is what we're trying to get at. When you understand the history, you understand the need to make a change for liberation, because that's when you realize you're under occupation. Now, the political status of the black colonists were Indians, African mainland Moors. We're going to get into that. West African, Negro Moors, West Indian Moors, Black British Moors, not Christians before changing law. They came from Bermuda, Jamaica, and Barbados, St. Kitts, and the Leeward Islands. Now, then they made a change. There were changes that occurred in the political status based off skin tone. Now, this change was like they defined a slave as whose skin color is marked as an outsider, black, and deemed property of the master. So they had to make a separation because now the indentured services are they're coming up, their contract is like coming to an end. So when that contract is coming to the end, they still want to continue to work because they're giving what you call their freedom papers, they're giving land, but they still want to be a part of the process of building the colony. So they was like, okay, we need to be able to separate the people. We need to be able to have them in a position where there's a hierarchy, like a level, like in corporations today, you have what you got your executive team, you have the management level, and then below the management level, you have the regular staff employees, and then you have what you call subcontractors and janitorial. It's the same model as in the current corporation as it was in the agricultural field. So they had to create these boundaries. And they did that by phenotype and skin tone. So they said, if you're dark, you're a slave. All right, bottom line. Then they put it into their law. In 1639, Maryland statute introduced the term slave to distinguish certain blacks and Indians as subsidiary members of society. Now, it also states all Negroes and other slaves shall serve durante vita. That means for life. This was in the Virginia legislature of 1663. Now, keep in mind, number 57 of Virginia Statistic Bureau class all non-reservation Indians as Negro. Like, okay, if you're not in that role, you're not on the role of being preserved as a civilized Indian on the Indian role, and you're not working with the Indian Bureau, you're classified as a Negro and you're classified as a slave. Now, the political status also changed for the child. It was once the child was always derived from the father. Then they changed it due to the mixing of the blood, and it changed from the English law to prevent slave children their freedom. So they enacted the Roman Egyptian principle called partus sequenta venturum. The blood brought belongs to the owner, which is the mother. Now, not only would an individual remain a slave forever because they was invoking durante vita because of your skin color, you're going to be a slave forever. But one could be born a slave because your mother is dark. There was times when you had the European male and the master, and he mated with the slave woman, and because she was dark, even though it produced a mixed blood child, that child was considered a slave. That child was not under the indentured servant contract. That child was considered a slave for life. Now, put a pin in that. Did the Emancipation Proclamation free the black people from slavery? We're going to touch on that in detail. Now, why did the colonists fight the British? Now let's look at that. I hope you can see this. Now, I know I'm not sure if you ever, frequent a what you call that? What's that team? Philadelphia 76ers. If you ever, visit us, went to a game and in your seat and you just happen to look down on the floor. And when you look down on the floor, you have this right here picture of the snake cut up in 13 pieces, joined to die. Now, this was Benjamin Franklin propaganda of illustration that he published. And his argument was in the Albany Plan in 1754 for a colonial union with he wanted the colonial states to confederate. He was really pushing for that in 1754, Old Benny. And so Lord Halifax and other officials in London, they anticipated the 1748 treaty, and they wanted to disrupt the war and things that was taking place between France and England. So in 1753, with the Board of Trade directed colonial governors in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, they was like, okay, let's convene. Let's meet up and talk about this. Now they had native tribes there as well, because they was like, hey, if you want us to protect you, you guys need to confederate, come to some type of understanding. But what our nation, our aborigine tribes and nations didn't understand, that they only had a charter, they only had a license from the king. It wasn't theirs to confederate. They had to get permission from the king of England. No, you're not going to do that. So the king of England was like, no, you're not confederating. You're not confederating. So this is the propaganda ad that Ben Franklin published in the Pennsylvania Gazette on May the 9th, 1754. Um, After the king denied their confederation, which is, they would have been then at the time the United States of America. Instead, they was United States of British America. All right. Now, they was like, you know what? We gonna declare, we gonna speak it out. We tired of you, King. We tired of you, King James, King George. We tired of you. We gonna make a unanimous declaration with the 13 United States of America. We're gonna be united. And they basically said these are some reasons why we don't like you. We don't like you because we had endeavored to prevent the population of these states. And this was some of the arguments. I found this to be quite interesting. When you go read the 1776 unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America, the complaints in there, they were serious. I mean, and they were not playing business. They was like, we're going to get away from you. We don't want to do business with you. We don't have any tax, we don't have any representation, and you're taxing us to the hip. Oh my God, aren't we getting taxed to the hip today? Yeah, no representation without taxation. So hey, so let's look at that. They was like, you know what? They said he has endeavored to prevent the population of these states for that purpose, obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners. You won't even let us naturalize the foreigners into the colonies, and refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriation of land. No, I gave you what I gave you, and that's all you're going to get. You're going to get what I gave you. That's it. That's it. That's all. And they said, also, for taking away our charters. You took away our charters. You took your permission to be in this colony back, and to do business and have religious protection and freedom. You took our charters away from us. What are some things that are being fought for today? The right of censorship, the right of autonomy of your body, the right to be able to be healthy, as far as have an option of clean water, food. So the same arguments that the colonists who received the charters complain about with the king, are those the same arguments of today? So if they understood there must be a separation, there must be a breakaway, there must be a fight, there must be something got to happen for our liberation, for our religious protection. There's something that must happen and occur in order for us to be able to be free, within our person, to be able to have life, liberty, and a pursuit of happiness. And that's what they said in the beginning in their preamble. It say, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what they scream. They scream these things. This is what we want. This is what we migrated. This is why we left our home country, and as an immigrated out and immigrated into another nation through the colony, to be able to have these troops and to hold them. And he said, and the king, he has excited domestic insurrections against us and have endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the Indian savages, who's known to rule as warfare. Oh, he's telling the nation, I'll tell those Aborigine nations to rise up against you guys if you don't act right. Oh, it was ugly. So we have to look at that. And they say, oh wow. That's when they went to the Lenape and said, hey, remember I said they was like, we need your help. We need your help. We need your help because we're in a just and necessary war in defiance and support of life, liberty, and independence against the King of England and his adherents. We need your help. So, that was occurring there. Now, this king's like, okay, all right, let me go ahead and break you off. Let me go ahead and we having these wars, we're back and forth with each other. Let's go ahead and just break you off, and I'll go ahead and release the jurisdictional rights of the territory to you. So they 1783 they signed a treaty with the British Crown, which granted the United States its sovereign power. All right. And look at the signers. American negotiator was John Adams, Benjamin Franklin. So they stole it. They was like, no, you're not getting your colony back. You're not sending over other proprietors. We're going to take this thing. We're going to take it by force. We're going to go to war. We're taking this thing by force. Let's look at the etymology of a thief. What is a thief? That's one who takes property from another. So they became a thief against their crown. We're going to take this colony. We're taking it from you. We're not going to be reduced to a role of a subservient. We're going to take these colonies, this land, and we're going to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They understood the mission. See, when you don't understand the mission, you don't know if you have anything to fight for. You don't know if you have anything worth bringing up voice against. The mission was understood over 500 years ago. We're leaving this country for life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. They understood that they were not no longer wanted. They were not going back home. They were not going back to Europe. The ancestors of the Europeans are not going back home. To this day, they're not going back home. The descendants are not going home. They're patriots. But however, you have to remember that there is a body of people that are home. And you have to know that you are home. This is home. This is what this is about. All right. Now let's look at some biblical principles of stealing. Now, I thought this was great because you know how, the use of the Bible is like the pinnacle, we said the apex of the how a society operate. So, this is from the Bible. This is what it talks about a thief. Let's look into that. What it talk about with the thief. In Exodus 21:16, it said, whoever steals a man and sells him, and anyone found in possession of him shall be put to death. That occurred. Proverbs 6:30 and 31 say, people do not despise a thief if he steals to satisfy his appetite when he is hungry, but if he is caught, he will pay sevenfold. So we're talking about reparations here. So if you're preparing an argument about reparations, the Bible is deemed a covenant and commandment for the European nations. It say you are to be restored, you are to be repaid sevenfold, and we will give all the goods of his house, and he will give all the goods of his house. Okay. And Leviticus 6:1-5 said, Lord spoke to Moses, said, if anyone sins or commits a breach of faith against the Lord by deceiving his neighbor in a matter of deposit or security or through robbery, or if he has oppressed his neighbor or has found something lost and lied about it, swearing falsely in all these things that people do and sin thereby, or if he has took by robbery or what he got by oppression or the deposit that has committed to him, or the lost thing that he found, or anything about which he has sworn falsely, he shall restore. He shall restore it in full, and shall add a fifth to it, and give it to him to whom it belongs on the day he realizes his guilt. That's the question. Founding fathers are founding thieves. Have they? Have they realized this? Yes. Have they realized their guilt in order to have the discussion of reparations? Now, yes, it's realized, because there was a call out to rescind the doctrine of discovery. There was a call out. Hey, you know that's not right. You need to rescind this thing and give that to whom in which they have custody over. This occurred in 1537. There was a bull. There was a bull written by Paul Pope III, and it wrote, "We define and declare, as you can see it, that the said Indians and all other people who have later be discovered by Christians are by no means to be deprived of their liberty or the possession of their property, even though they be outside the Christian faith, and that they may and should freely and legitimately enjoy their liberty and possession of their property. Nor shall they be in any way enslaved. Should the contrary happen, it shall be null and have no effect." So this bull went out and said, hey, yeah, we issued that doctrine of discovery, but we're gonna issue this bull that's saying that, we don't have a claim to that. Now that bull was effective. It was like pretty much like a ruse. It was like a ruse to say we understand this, but it's like a ruse. In 1823, after the United States becoming a nation state, occupying the land, the decision was made in Johnson versus McIntosh, and Judge Marshall, Supreme Court Judge Marshall, ruled only possessed occupancy rights, meaning their lands could be taken by powers that discovered them. So basically, the Supreme Court ruled that the doctrine of discovery is valid. In law, occupancy means in the act of possessing, residing in, or using a property as an owner or tenant. So the Supreme Court is saying, hey, we discovered it and we're occupying it. So we have a right to the claim. Now, Pope Francis, he's the current Pope. In May the 30th, 2023, Pope Francis repudiated the doctrine of discovery, a legal concept that allowed Europeans to claim lands that they discovered. Now, keep in mind that the principle for discovery gave title to the government by subjects or by those authority. It was made against by other European governments, which title must be consummated by possessions. Now, repudiate, that means to discharge. That means to discharge a debt. You're no longer obligated of that debt. So if the Pope repudiated the doctrine of discovery just as recently as March the 30th, 2023, why hasn't the conversation regarding reparations been on the table? So the question is, we talked about all these various nations that settled in America. Who owe the Black nations reparations? Is it Portuguese, France, Russia, Dutch, the Spanish with assistance from the converted Moors, British Crown, or United States via the 13 Confederated colonies? That is something that we must address and look into. And it doesn't have anything to do with skin tone, the white man against the Black man. This is about what is yours, what you occupy. And you wonder why we work, how we work, you're taxed, how you're taxed. You are in a perpetual cycle of servitude. This is the argument. We continued along the argument of reparation scheme in the Black community, dealing with the foundation of colonization, as we looked at the founding fathers, as we looked at their complicity in this through the missionary of the 1622 propagating the faith. So this propaganda continues to this day. So next week, as we continue forward, gatekeepers of Christian, we're going to look at that Black mobility on November the 6th. Now, this is going to be after the day of the election, where there's going to be voted in a new European gatekeeper, but we're going to talk about how that also continues along with the Black nobility and their role in the slave trade, their role in the colonies. Now, Just Another Messenger is not monetized on YouTube. You can go to Cash App to support us at $ Just Another Messenger. If you'd like to email us, you can email us at justanothermessengerpodcast@gmail.com. I hope that this information you were able to follow along, get some great information, make the connection here. Make the connection so we can really look at the role of reparation towards liberation and healing the ancestral wounds. I bid you farewell tonight and thank you for tuning in to Just Another Messenger. Good night.